Amelia felt shock in her heart. Mr. Nindra is a world-famous hypnotist. He had studied medicine and of course heard his name. Mr. Nindra comes here. He must have treated Henry's sleep disorder. It seems that his sleep disturbance is more serious than he thought. Amelia was worried, so she came to the study door. At this moment, a strange voice sounded from within. Amelia was surprised and quickly opened the study door. The room was a mess, all the papers on the table fell on the carpet, and the clock on Mr. Nindra's hand was also broken. Henry stood at the table, his big hands propped up on the table, the veins in his hands clearly visible. And his chest heaved like he had run a marathon. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Henry lifted his head, and Amelia looked into his deep, narrow eyes. Now his eyes were a ghastly red and a deep shame. He seems to be a different person now. Amelia was no stranger to this person, and had only met her last night. The two looked at each other. Henry pressed his thin lips ready to scream, then Henry said earnestly, "Get out. Get out quick." Amelia stood still. The butler took the broken clock and led Mr. Nindra out, and closed the study door. A door separated them. Amelia looked at Mr. Nindra and asked, "Mr. Nindra, how are you?" Master Nindra shook his head. "At first I could hypnotize the young master and let him rest for a day every month, but his mental state changed too quickly. He was very alert, and the belief in his heart was very strong, that it was so terrifying, he could no longer hypnotize her." Amelia is not surprised. Henry is a great and strong man who is also secretive, who rarely expresses his emotions. Such a person is calm and can display self-control to an almost abnormally high level. Amelia gently dropped the bolt, then she reached out and turned the doorknob, to enter. "Young lady, no, don't come in, it's dangerous for you to enter now. Have you forgotten what happened last night?" Mr. Parman quickly tried to stop him. Amelia looked at Pak Parman with clear pupils. "Sir Parman, this is because I haven't forgotten what happened last night, so I want to come in. Once a sleep disorder develops into a mental illness, he will no longer be able to control his illness and become irritable. I will accept this second personality, and the second personality will completely replace it." Mr. Parman paled. Amelia pushed open the door and entered. In that situation, Henry looked at Amelia, who came back, and her face was already showing a different degree of anger. "Get out, don't make me say it a third time." Amelia stepped forward, her beautiful eyes filled with a bright look. "Mr. Mahendra, I just wanted to try what would happen if you said it a third time." Henry felt uncomfortable and disturbed, the blue veins on his forehead bulged, his body slowly lost control. He didn't want to hurt him. Reaching out to grasp Amelia's slender arms, he said from his throat, "Go, I say." She pushes him. Amelia couldn't stand up, she was silent, and when she fell on the carpet, her forehead hit the sharp corner of the coffee table, and her blood suddenly dripped. Hiss. SSSSS, ah. Amelia snorted in pain, covering the wound with her hand, and fresh blood dripped from her fingers. Henry felt guilty. He immediately took out the medicine box and used a cotton swab dipped in alcohol to treat the wound. "Remember now, this is the consequence since I've spoken the third time." Amelia looked at him with a weary, "Consequences? Mr. Henry, isn't this domestic violence?" Henry helped her put on the bandage, her thin lips curled into a slight smile. "You dared to come in when you knew I was going to let go of my anger. Why are you so brave?" Amelia looked at him with beautiful eyes. "Mr. Henry, may be others afraid of you, but I will not be afraid of you." Henry's slender finger lightly paused, and he looked at her bandaged pathetic little face. "Come out and leave me alone." After speaking, Henry helped Amelia to her feet. Amelia quickly stretched out her little white hand and immediately hugged her waist. As the girl hugged him, Henry's burly body quickly stiffened. Her body was soft as boneless, and her little face pressed against his firm chest, like a gentle and docile little cat clinging to him. Henry again smelled the pleasant scent of her body, which slowly seduced his nerves. At this time, Amelia whispered in his arms, "Mr. Henry, don't bear your own burden, let me accompany you." Henry's terrifying anger slowly dissipated, and even the frightening shadow under his eyes disappeared. He raised his hand and hugged her. Placing his handsome face in his soft hair and stroking it, his scent made him feel very happy. Maybe it was because he had just eaten strawberry jam, so he was still colored with the scent of the milky fruit dessert. Amelia hugged her quietly for a moment, then moved her small hands up along her smooth waist, caressing her stiff spine. "If you still feel uncomfortable, you can bite me to vent your irritation." "Bite you? Aren't you afraid that it hurts?" "Think clearly, I mean that." Amelia stood on tiptoe and bit her broad shoulders. He bit it fast and hard, there was no warning, and blood was rushing from his white shirt. He bit him until he bled. He bit it like a piece of meat. The sudden pain made Henry's muscles tighten. He carried the girl and took a few steps back. Amelia's calf hit the edge of the sofa. And they fell, both of them rolling onto the sofa. "Do you want revenge?" Henry pressed him down, his narrow eyes slowly closing. Amelia raised a fine eyebrow. You just pushed me, and now I've bit you, isn't this fair?" Amelia wanted to get up, but Henry pressed her shoulder. The current posture of the two people was somewhat ambiguous. Amelia stared at him as if he was like prey to her. "Mr. Henry, what are you doing? You smell so good, you haven't told me what brand of perfume you use yet." Amelia pursed her lips and said jokingly, "Mr. Henry, I told you that I don't use perfume. You thought about this question until now, maybe I should suspect that you might be asking the wrong person." Henry had always known that her eyes were beautiful, especially now that she overlapped. He closed his eyes, pressed his thin lips against the bandage on his forehead, and softly said, "Is this sick? Forgive me. I apologize sincerely." Amelia couldn't believe it when such a strong and domineering man said, "I'm sorry," to her in such a low, spoiled voice. "Mr. Henry, let me go first." Amelia reached her hand to her chest, trying to push her away. But Henry didn't move, he still reached out his hand and held her tiny face.
Thank you all. Have a nice day. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, so that the admin is more enthusiastic to provide entertainment for all of you. See you in the next video.